Hello and welcome to Season 2 of Desire Dilemma, a podcast that amplifies immigrant voices in America. I'm Funmi Apantaku-Onayemi, your host. Our guest today is Asine, the founder of Home of Influence in the United States. Mr. Asine trains clients to develop the skills and confidence they need to make valuable friends, build relationships, and strengthen their social network. He authored Think Fast, Speak Smart: How to Think and Speak Brilliantly in Impromptu Situations. He was financially comfortable in his home country of Nigeria. However, the uncertainty made him feel less secure and in search of a stable and predictable life in the US. His journey to America was inspired by music, movies, and publications that portray the freedom to pursue one's dream and also have the support to be all that one can be in America. However, his first few months in America were shaken by culture shock that almost made him lose his voice and his passion. His determination to endure and hone his skills made him overcome his obstacles. Born in Enugu to parents from Edo State in Nigeria, he was passionate about the power of communication in transcending ordinary lives to accomplishing extraordinary success. Edo State is the 22nd most populous state and 22nd largest state in Nigeria, with about 5 million people. Its state capital, Benin City, is the fourth largest city in Nigeria. It is coined the heartbeat of the nation because of its cultural heritage, strategic location, and economic potential. Good morning, Solomon. How are you?
I'm very fine. Thank you, Funmi. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming on Desire Dilemma. And we just look forward to talking to you today just to get a feel for your plans and your work on Home of Influence. But before we get to Home of Influence, I just want to know, give me your background in terms of how your life was in Nigeria before you got here.
I am one of 7 children from Edo State in Nigeria, but I was born in Enugu State in Nigeria. And that was because my father was a police officer, so he moved around a lot. And after about 2 years after I was born, we went to Benin City, Edo State, which is where I spent most of my life back in Nigeria. And just growing up, we lived a very modest life because my father retired. So we weren't as, rich as he was while he was still in the police force. So our lives were very, 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 very modest, like the average Nigerian. And I went to school, the university in Nigeria, University of Benin. And after that, I moved over. After finishing from Uniben, I moved to Lagos. I got a job at Globacom. And I was at Globacom for about 3 years before I started a business. And I resigned from Globacom, started a business and a training and consulting business. And that was what I was doing before I actually came to America.
So if you had, even though you say you had a modest beginning, but if you had the opportunity in Nigeria to actually start a business, why would you leave Nigeria to come to the US?
The United States, from the time I was very little, has had a huge influence in my life, not just my life. My friends, most of the movies that we watched were American movies, the music, American music. Then we would order American magazines, Ebony, XXL, and all of those things. So as a child and even a teenager, there was this huge influence, American culture on my life personally. And I've always had that desire to travel out of the country. And speaking of why I left even though I had the opportunity, there was a huge period of time before I got into college and after I came out of college where I experienced huge deprivation, both financially, materially, deprivation. To the extent that there was several times in college where I can go a whole day without even eating, So it created a very strong impression in my mind. And so even after I got a job at Globacom, my life was comfortable. I started a business. The business was, making some profit. The very first thing that keeps coming to my mind, what if something happens in Nigeria? I was so scared. Even when I was leaving, I had friends that told me, wow, you have a business that you started, to grow. Why are you leaving? I felt like, man, I just have to leave. I saw it as an opportunity to come over to America and just align myself with where I believe, everything is possible. Your dreams can be met. You can do whatever you want to do. You can expand as much as you want to expand. That was the mindset that I had at the time that I liquidated my business and traveled over to America. So I would say it was almost like a fear factor that drove me out of Nigeria to America. And do I regret it? I would say the answer is no.
Yes.
Yeah, I do not regret it. Even though I miss Nigeria, since I came 2017, I've not gone back. I hope to go back next year, but I do not regret it. But that is the reason why it was a fear factor that drove me out of Nigeria.
That is quite interesting because that is quite similar to a point to my story in terms of having that rush. I just felt this rush to get out of the country for no reason. It's crazy. When I look back now, it was like, I must leave. Yes. And I came. So when you said and it was funny because things were just dry. It was almost as if you didn't even know where you'll end. Yes. No hope in sight.
Yes.
And you looked at everybody, it's like nobody was going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
What? And I felt this rush. Almost, I remember the first day I went to the embassy, my dad said, must you go to? I said, yes, now. And that was how I left, Yeah. And as soon as I got my visa, I said, I think I got my visa like on a Thursday or a Friday. You know what? I said the very next flight out of Nigeria, I left. Yes. So when you were saying that, I'm thinking, my goodness, there comes this drive. It's almost like crazy drive. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's just us, right? It must have maybe just the two of us have this in common. But
no, I think that several other people. I think I know someone else that came, even though it felt like you were comfortable back in Nigeria.
Right.
But the uncertainty. Mm-hmm. It sometimes is difficult to live in a space where today there's something is good, tomorrow something else, like there's no stability. There's so much uncertainty. So it's just, you feel a little bit of confidence when you're in a space where things are more predictable. If you're poor, okay, you're poor. If you're growing, there's more predictability. You turn off the light, your light is going to come on. You pay your bills, you're going to get power. Unlike Nigeria, where you pay your power bills, but you don't have power for months. It's just, there's so much uncertainty, and that was like the factor for me.
Now you left Nigeria. First day in America, what did you see and what impressed you?
Oh boy, the cold. I came in January. January 29th, 2017. It was cold. I wasn't properly dressed, and my flight landed in Atlanta, and I moved from Atlanta, took a flight from Atlanta to Chicago, and Chicago was cold. Like I couldn't wait to get to the house. So I got to the house, just apart going beyond the first day. I went to my brother's place, my older brother. He lives here in Chicago area. And my mind was just like, I was just looking at, when we were in the car, looking at the buildings and, seeing some things that didn't actually align with my thoughts of how America actually is. I remember like he drove me around. This is not the first day, but the first week. He drove me around town. We went to downtown Chicago. He was just driving me around to show me the area. And I was just thinking, because I saw people, especially in downtown, I saw like homeless people. I never had that picture of America, while I was in Nigeria. And so it was kind of a surprise, that existed. Even though I saw it in movies, some of the movies, but I didn't actually, like my mind wasn't ready to conceive the reality of it.
Yeah, so it didn't register.
No.
It did not register. True.
Yes.
So when on your way to the US, you must have had some kind of goal to accomplish. And so once you got here and you saw what you saw, what then did you decide to accomplish in America?
Before I left Nigeria, already, I'm passion driven. Like very, very passion driven. And my passion has always been to train, to teach, to speak. That has always been my passion from even when I was a teenager. I was a teacher in church. In Globacom, I was part of a team that trained, and I resigned. I went into training business. I went go in-house to companies to teach, and also I had open workshops where businesses send people to teach. So coming over to America, I had the same goal. The goal was just to come over and to do the same thing that I was doing back in Nigeria, to teach, to use my voice to train. But when coming over, when I came over and I had that experience, there was kind of a culture shock for me, especially because I used my voice, right? But coming over, I realized that, man, sometimes I'm having conversations and I know that this person I'm speaking with doesn't really grab everything I'm saying. I could sense it, the chemistry tells you, man, this person is not 100% understanding everything that I'm saying. I remember an experience I had. It was still maybe the second week I came over, and I went with my brother to an auto shop for oil change. So I was sitting with a lady, an American, and we were just talking. I could tell maybe my accent was too heavy or something. And then she asked me what my name was, and I said, Solomon. And she was saying something else. She was trying to pronounce the name, back to me, and she was saying something else that is not what I said. So I thought Solomon is a common name, right? So I insisted that she pronounces my name. So I said, as in Solomon in the Bible. Oh, she said, oh, Solomon. I said, oh God, even my name. So because of that perception, that initial perception of how I am being perceived, as far as my voice is concerned, it drew me, it scared me a little bit, because I know that is my asset. That is what I want. I need to use my voice. So I got to a space where I couldn't really speak out. So my voice just went in. I can't explain how that came to happen. So that when I went to a store, people asked me can you speak louder? Can you talk louder? It was almost like I was scared to talk. Yes.
So that kind of shook your confidence.
Correct. It did.
So you felt demoralized.
Not demoralized. It was just a brief moment of shock.
Because I'm thinking that here you came from Nigeria, where we usually have confidence.
Correct.
Right? You do well in school, you get in front of your classmates, you speak, you're in church, you really just interact well. And now you're in a country where people can't even pronounce the name, or they couldn't hear you pronounce a very common name.
Correct.
That would have done a lot to you.
Yeah, it was very brief. The type of human being that I am is I always go after the things that I fear. I have that courage, like most Nigerians do, to just go do what you want to do, in spite of what is going on. But my experience with my voice was just a little bit of shock, because I realized I don't want to be a doctor or a nurse, or maybe a scientist or research where I'm just behind the desk, not using my voice. That would have been, something easy to just do. But I was very true to my passion. I wanted to do the same thing I was doing back in Nigeria. And I insisted, even though I was shocked, my thought process was, how do I get to a place where I can relate clearly with people here and not changing my accent, developing my own voice to a point where it is clear enough that I am not in doubt whether someone understands what I'm saying or not. So the very first thing I did after that initial shock was to look up Toastmasters, because back in Nigeria, I had two experiences with Toastmasters meeting. And I realized I knew back then that it was a global club. And for those people who are not aware of what Toastmasters is, it's just a communications and leadership club. So less than 1 month after coming to America, I joined Toastmasters immediately. And there I had the opportunity to go in deep in the belly of the beast and quickly overcoming the fears, that I ended up being the president of Toastmasters Club, winning competitions, international competitions in Toastmasters. But I decimated that fear almost as quickly as it came.
But not too many immigrants will have the courage to do what you do.
Correct.
Not too many immigrants will also have the resources, meaning that you knew about Toastmasters from Nigeria. Many people won't even know, and they still won't know. So the desired dilemma, actually, it's about immigrants.
Yes.
In that it's about what you have done to be able to quench the challenge that you faced and therefore move forward. So at this time, if you don't mind, can you tell me exactly, or tell us how, or the steps that we should anticipate when an immigrant runs into a situation like yours, especially when they run into situations such as this, when they're looking for jobs, when they're looking to go to schools, when they're looking to present, their findings, or if they're researchers, for example, or they're just in the university setting. Help us with that. So,
Correct.
How would you handle an immigrant, and how would you help an immigrant in this situation coming from the home of influence?
All right. At home of influence, because that's the business I created. I started coming over to America just about 2 years after I came here, and I teach social and emotional intelligence and relationship management, rapport building, interpersonal communication. But at the center of all of this is self-esteem. It's something that has to be preserved. And that has been one of the like almost the flagship course that we offer at Home of Influence. Self-esteem has to be preserved, especially for immigrants, because it is so easy for you to just lose your self-esteem. And I see that because I have conversations with immigrants a lot. You come over, you're overwhelmed, by, even though the confidence is there, but you feel like, oh man, you shrink to some extent. That's why most immigrants, they go for jobs where you don't have to speak too much, and the fear comes from like this linguistic difference. You almost similar to the experience that I had. You're coming, your accent is heavy, you can't really present. And so let me just find something. Let me be a computer engineer. Let me be a nurse. Let me be something that, that I don't really have to talk. And some people just lose their confidence, especially when that is combined with some of the real struggles that you have to go through here in the United States. So the very first thing I would do for an immigrant is to remind them who they are, where they're from, build back that self-esteem, build back that confidence, help them with self-awareness, understanding their strengths, their weaknesses, understanding the weaknesses that can be improved, and the weaknesses, in quotes, that cannot be improved. For me, I had a weakness. I wouldn't call it a weakness, but my accent was very heavy at that time, that I knew that I had to do something about. It was a weakness that I know I could improve. I didn't want to change my accent, but I needed to be able to pronounce my words correctly in a way that it is understood, which is why I went to Toastmasters and I had to brush up my words, pronouncing it correctly. So that's what exactly I'm going to do for an immigrant. If I have that opportunity to work with one, first of all, what do you want to do? Build your self-esteem, build your confidence. What do you want to do? What are your weaknesses? Do you need this weakness? Do you have to improve upon this weakness? Okay, what are the pathways to overcome this weakness so you can achieve the things that you want to achieve? And so it's almost, I would say, not so easy, but I would say easy. It's not so easy, for those who've been here, immigrants who've come over to America, you understand that it's not as easy as you think it's going to be. But I can take them through a path that would, help them build back that confidence, self-esteem, and meet their goals.
When I went on your website, you talked about how it's your passion to empower people.
Correct.
So what you've described is actually that. And in my day, we didn't have that. I remember the University of Houston, I had a public speaking class. Yes. And my instructor called me and said for a meeting and said, "Why are you doing this?" I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "You're in America. No one will ever understand what you're saying." So, wow. Yeah, why? It's either you change your accent to standard American accent or you go back to your country. And you know what? Just like you, I'm like, oh wow. My gosh. I was afraid, University of Houston, how do I do this? You know what I did? I turned the table on him because, so my presentations were about Nigeria, okay? Yeah. So, and I'll come to class wearing my Nigerian garb and talking about our tradition. I was at least, public speaking, you can present anything. So correct. I chose to do that. Would you believe I became one of my professor's favorite students, are now telling me to actually coach other people. And I'm thinking, no, you're kidding. Not because I changed my accent, but because I let him know, just like you said, self-esteem. Yeah. And I felt empowered because I knew what I was talking about. I didn't just speak anything out of the blue. I was talking about my country. So it was more like a cultural exchange classroom now. not just for public speaking. I was also introducing them to my culture and to my accent. So it was acceptable. He had no choice but to accept me and also accept what I brought to the table.
That's correct, because what some people do is to want to try to change their accent. That you can't compete trying to change your accent to be an American accent. You can't, because you're not standing out and you're not perfect. You can't have that perfect American accent. So making an effort to try to talk like an American, that is not the way to go. The way to go is to be your authentic self, maintain that voice that you have, that you've been blessed with, stand out with that voice, and find ways to, just speak like you're talking to you now. You speak like very clearly. Anyone who doesn't understand you doesn't understand English at all. So you're unique in who you are with your unique voice, and do whatever you want to do with that voice, which is why, like I mentioned about all of the competition that I win, because I stand speaking competition with Americans with American accent, with speaking to an American audience, and almost every time I come out first. So it's just standing in that uniqueness, standing in that confidence of who you are, and just expanding from there, not trying to change who you are to fit with the American society, but bringing out that uniqueness that you have all around in your voice and your behavior, being unique. And I think that is a powerful thing. Just like you said, your professor had to see the power in your uniqueness and put you above, every other person.
So I want you to tell me about a client of yours that you're very happy about the progress they've made coming through the home of influence.
Okay, I worked with a lady, not an immigrant though, an American. She's a hairdresser, and her fingers, the little finger and the next one to it, were kind of deformed. They were not like the other fingers; they were deformed. She said the fingers were burnt, and so she was so self-conscious about it, that when she's making hair, she moves in such a way that if you're sitting, you don't get to see the hands. And also, she wears a hat. In fact, the very first time that we had a session together, virtually, her camera was shut off. I couldn't see the person I was speaking with. So I encouraged her. The next session, she took off the camera, but she was wearing a hat. She says she never takes that hat off. So I went to try to understand exactly why that is the case. And she told me that the parents were divorced. Growing up, the parents were divorced. And anytime she goes to her father's house to stay, the dad always calls her like a monkey or ugly, insults her. And so she was so self-conscious about how she looks, and she was so broken as far as her personhood is concerned. And which was why she signed up for personal one-on-one coaching. And we went through the process together. Apart from her turning on her camera, she had to, before the end of our time together, she took off the hat. I encouraged her. She was able to, walk outside without the hat. She was so excited. And she said now when she's making hair, she's comfortable making hair. And, that type of situation is something that she has to practice over a period of time, which is what I encouraged her, because there's a tendency to flip back. If you've had a very long period of, a damaged and dysfunctional self-image, you can have a moment of brilliance like she had during our session and, some weeks after, but there's a need to just keep, reminding yourself and building upon the confidence that you've gained in that 3-month process. And, there was, I think she sent me an email, I think about almost going into a month now, just thanking me again. She thanked me for the time that we had, that I took her through, and that she's still, working on maintaining the confidence that she's gotten. And so that was one very practical, very testimony-worthy experience that I had with a client.
Yes, that's quite because you can imagine that the 2 things she brought to you, her hands, her fingers, her hair.
Yes.
Those are the things that she had to work with. Oh, wow, that was quite, I will almost call it miraculous, because it's beyond understanding, how you can actually change one's mindset over the fact that they've gone for so long just having this horrible low self-esteem,
Yes. Which is what that was part of what I made her understand, her line of work
Yes.
is to beautify people.
Right.
So you should be the standard, irrespective of how you feel you look.
Yes.
You know, you should see yourself as the standard of beauty, and you treat yourself that way. And it's a mindset.
That's true.
Beauty is the mindset. Your look is what at the time I was very obsessed with the concept of beauty. How did I come about that concept? How do I know that Brad Pitt is handsome and the other guy from there's this guy from Desperado, I can't remember his name, is ugly? Who told me, like, where does it come from? Sometimes you're socially engineered to believe certain things.
That's true.
Now if you walk into like the boutiques, clothing shops, you see that they have different types of mannequin now. Oversized, like plus size mannequin, black mannequin, and because that is part of the social engineering process, to make us begin to see beauty in a different way.
That's true.
As against how it was when we were growing up. There was almost like a standard of how a beautiful girl has to look. So if you understand that we're being socially engineered in terms of how we perceive reality, you can make up your own reality, especially with how you look. I tell my clients, I am the standard of handsome. Anyone, like, if I look in the mirror, I'm looking at the most handsome human being that ever existed. And that impacts how I present myself to the world. If you see me presenting no matter the room I walk into as someone as worthy a human being as any other human being in the world. And that is because I see myself as a standard. And people see that, people perceive that, when you believe it. It's just a mindset. There's more to our mind than we actually realize. And so that is one thing that I try to make my clients and students understand.
That's beautiful. Just the way you put that, that's powerful. There's this obsession about the fact that introverts are almost valueless when compared to extroverts. Okay. Could you clarify that? Can you debunk that for me?
Now, this is the challenge with introverts. We live life, we're not designed to be isolated. We're designed to live in community as human beings. So, and living in community require you to be able to speak, require you to be able to interact, require you to be able to live and, function with other human beings. But introverts, for a good portion of their life, they like to be by themselves, right? So when they get to a point in life where they need to speak out, they need to be a leader, they need to, do things that need them to interact with other people, it becomes a challenge. And they've not had the time to build that skill, to interact and to mingle with people. Not all introverts, but most introverts. And so they try to find, what's the solution? What do I do? How do I learn? Because it's not been practiced for the majority of their lives. But introverts are some of the most intelligent, the most analytical people, introverts. So what I try to help introverts do is to move to a point of ambiversion. You're not changing your introversion or introverted nature. You're getting to a space, just like ambiversion. An ambivert is one who is in between. You're at your core, you're an introvert, but you're not stranded in social situations. Recognize your power as an introvert, someone who should be analytical, someone who thinks critically, but also when you find yourself in social situations, you're not stranded. You're able to effectively manage social situations. So I'm an introvert that became an ambivert. That is not supposed to be a statement that anyone should mention, should say, because people think that if you're an introvert, you're an introvert. If you're an extrovert, you can move, it's a continuum. Extroversion scale is a continuum. You can develop skills that move you away from being an extreme introvert to a place of ambiversion. So you're not isolated or you're not stranded. That's the word. You're not stranded when you get into spaces where you need to use your skills, where you need to interact with people. But I love introverts. I'm an introvert at my core. And I think introverts are some of the smartest people that you can speak with or meet with.
Yeah, you said it. Thank you so much, because I'm an introvert too.
Yeah, you see.
But once in a while, I let my voice come out a little bit. So I really appreciate the fact that you were able to clarify that. And I thank you for today, really. Solomon, you are quite a gift. Not only you are quite a gift because, when you have a business in which you pull other people up, that is a gift. And that's a blessing to others. So we thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for me.
Yes, and we look forward to all you are about to do and all that you're doing at the Home of Influence. To our audience, thank you for listening to our podcast on immigrants' desires to come to America and their dilemmas while staying in America. We hope this episode has been helpful and informative. Remember, adapting to a new culture can be difficult. With the right guidance and support, it is possible. We want you to share our podcast. We also want you to call us or go on our website, desireddilemma.com, for more episodes. Thank you so much for being with us today and have a wonderful rest of your day.